So we've talked about that avenue, but I'm curious about some examples of specific properties that have a unique lifestyle and how we can market them to the right folks based on the lifestyle. And so I've heard of things that like in markets like yours, Jack, of having a barn party. Right. So instead of having like a open house, a traditional open house, having a barn party where you invite the community in, maybe it's a property that could be used additionally for event space or something like that. But I'm curious, Jack, do you have any examples that you can think of or of something like that or some other sort of event that would
Yeah.
drive the right prospect group?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I'll tell you, I've not done a barn party, but I have attended such. And I've got what's very interesting in our market. We do have a lot of beautiful rural properties, and some folks would call them gentleman farms. So these are not ranches. This is not thousands of acres. It's not necessarily even hundreds of acres, but maybe 10, 20, 30 acres with a barn on it. And a lot of times the buyers of these properties, they don't necessarily want livestock or horses. That's why they don't need a big sprawling bunch of acreage, but they do want that kind of rural experience. And so the barn becomes not necessarily a place for horses. It might be a place for a party barn. And a lot of folks love that whole vibe of having the barn for not necessarily a public event, but for private events, for family events, and things of that nature. It's a lot of fun. And then, of course, we do have folks who do want to have horses or cattle and that sort of thing. And so, again, that's the lifestyle they're looking for. And then you can market accordingly. One of my favorite categories along these lines, it's complete opposite, is the category that says college life. And this one that speaks to me personally because our kids are almost grown. Our youngest son is 17, so he'll be graduating in a couple of years. And so, for the first time in my life in many years, we can choose not only to go vacation anytime you want to, not worry about school schedules, but we can also choose where to live and not be thinking about with school zones. That's a new experience for me. And one of the places I want that I'm gravitating toward and have been for years are communities around colleges because the vibe typically those are more urban communities. Typically, if you're in a college community, there's always sidewalks on both sides of the street, and I love that. So now you've got, somewhere that's walkable or what was the word you used earlier, Tammy? I like the word you used.
Accessible.
Accessible, thank you, yeah, because our greenways we talked about earlier, our greenways are accessible. We say the word walkable, but they're accessible, they're paved. These are not
Hmm.
gravel or pea gravel, like you have at the beaches in some places. You actually can, wheelchairs, skateboard, skates, walk, whatever. But I do like the sidewalks on both sides of the street, and college communities tend to have a vibrance that you can't necessarily put your finger on it, but just having all those young people in one area, an academic area, tends to create an energy that's just a really good feel. It's such a cool way to kinda bring communities together for a marketing purpose. And then when you see college life as a category for homes, upscale homes, you typically see coffee shops and cool restaurants and more urban experiences. And those all speak to me personally. But that's a way to market. So back to your original question, I know that we had a property recently. It was an in-town property near a college, is in part of a college town, college part of town. And so when we were putting all the photos online of the property, like we typically would do, the interior, the exterior, the drone, whatever. In addition, we put photos of the coffee shops, the restaurants, the nearby parks, all those things that are easily accessible without getting in a car. And that's a big deal to some buyers. And some of these college communities, in this particular case, or urban communities, are very upscale communities, but it's a very different kind of luxury
Hmm.
experience. That's the key word, experience, right? Lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's a very different lifestyle experience than the luxury home in the cul-de-sacs we discussed earlier. And oftentimes, the consumer or the buyer that might be looking at that urban experience might be somebody like myself, maybe an empty nester who did the cul-de-sac thing, and I didn't want a lifestyle change. I want to go downtown and do a college or do a high-rise living or whatever. So
For sure.
it's a cool way to think about marketing properties based on the experience.
And that makes me think a little further about the experience of showing properties that have a unique lifestyle. And so I know in my area, we have a lot of waterfront communities. And so it's an excellent opportunity to show property by boat, right?
Mhm.
Because many times those folks that are looking in those communities, it's all about the boating lifestyle,
Mhm.
especially if they're coming from elsewhere in the country and like that's their jam, right? They want the boat, they want the experience. And so being able to take prospective buyers to see properties and neighborhoods by water can make an incredible impression, more so than just meeting them there in the driveway. And so I'm curious, have you shown some of your acreage or whatnot? I'm I'm thinking very romantically
Go
here
ahead.
because
Let's hear. I know what you're about to
I love
say.
horseback
I
riding,
knew you
right?
were
And
going
I'm
to
just
say
wondering,
that.
did you know I was going to say it? Have you ever shown a property by horseback?
I have not, but I have friends who have. What is much more typical, and I'll be doing it next week actually. What is much more typical is showing property in a gator or some sort of four wheeler where you're taking your clients, and it's a lot of fun because you're going through pastures and up and down hills and through creeks. It's a really fun experience in the way that you show the property that's very different from the typical driving down the cul-de-sac. So yeah, the showing experience, your goal is try to capture the experience of the lifestyle. You know, we've got a country music singer's estate listed currently who's got a bunch of acreage with a barns, that sort of thing. And so when we show that property, one of the things that I always encourage folks to do is to take a walk through the pasture down to the pond and really kind of experience the lifestyle of the property.